want to upgrade the drop bars on your bike. Perhaps this is because you've damaged your current ones and they need replacing, or maybe you want to experiment with a different shape drop, or perhaps a different width of handlebar, or perhaps you just want to upgrade them to some fancy carbon ones that are aerodynamic to help you go even faster. It's not a job that you'll find yourself doing very often, I mean, unless you crash all the time, but there are a few things more annoying than riding a road bike where the handlebars aren't set up correctly, so we're going to show you how to do it the right way. The tools you'll require for this job are Allen keys or Torx keys, depending on the stem bolts that you have on your bike. It might require Torx. Also, a torque wrench. If you plan on doing any maintenance at home, a torque wrench is something that I consider to be an essential tool. It's incredibly useful. You're also going to need a tape measure, some electrical tape, and potentially some new bar tape. But if your current bar tape is in good order, it's not too worn out, and you're careful when you remove it, you can recycle it. That's what I often do. The first thing to do is to secure the bike. Ideally, this is by putting it in a work stand. It makes it easier to work on. If you don't have one, a good tip is to put your bike in a static turbo trainer on the ground, as this too will help secure it and make it easier to work on without it falling over. If you don't have either of those two things, well, you could potentially build your own work stand like Manon did in a recent video. With the bike secure, the first step is to remove the bar tape on the handlebars. To do this, we're first going to peel back the shifter hoods. We take hold of them like that, pull them back on themselves. To remove the bar tape, you can either start from the end of the bar by removing the bar plug or bar bung, or you can start on the top by removing the finishing tape. Sometimes when you remove your bar tape, it tears and disintegrates. If this happens to you, don't worry. It's hard to predict which bar tape will do it and which won't. Sometimes it just does it. You can just replace it and put some new stuff on. We're now going to remove the shifters from the handlebar, and to do that you will require an Allen key, the size of which is dependent upon the type of shifters you have on your bike, but in most cases it's a 5mm Allen key, such as on this one, which is a Shimano hydraulic shifter, and the bolt we're undoing is this, which holds this circular clip that clamps the shifter onto the handlebar. To undo it, simply turn it anti-clockwise. The technique by which you remove the shifter from the bar will differ slightly depending on your exact handlebar. If you don't want to scratch the handlebar, then a good thing to do is to completely undo the clip, pull the shifter off, and then carefully take the clip off the bar. If you can get away with leaving the clip inside the shifter hood and just loose and pull it off, but this can scratch the drop. If you're using mechanical gears and or brakes, then you'll need to remove the cables and pull them through the handlebar by undoing them on the calipers and on the derailleurs, and then pulling them through the end of the shifter lever. And then if you've got cable outer used inside your internally routed bar, such as this, you'll need to remove that too. But don't throw it away. If it's in good condition, you can reuse it. If it's not in good condition, then use it to measure and cut the new piece to the same length as the bit you've taken out. Now, if you have an internally routed handlebar and hydraulic disc brakes, this too makes this job much more complicated in that you have to undo the hydraulic lines. Fortunately, my bar isn't internally routed, so I can just leave the shifter off and have it dangling. If you do have an internally routed bar, we do have other videos on the channel that show you how to disconnect hydraulic lines and then reconnect them. And in the future, we are planning to do a video that specifically looks at changing your handlebar when you have hydraulic lines and integrated cables. Fortunately though, I can just leave mine dangling at the side while I swap the bar before reconnecting them. The next step is super simple. You simply take your Allen key, or in your case it might be a Torx key, and undo the stem plate bolts so that you can remove the stem. The best thing to do is to turn each one and loosen it gradually and not just completely undo one, leaving the other three tight. That's bad workshop practice, as it can cause undue stress on the remaining three bolts and cause, well, one to fail. With your stem bolts removed, it's a good opportunity to just check the status of your stem, check it's in good working order and that none of the bolts are stripped or damaged in any way. And also, you can inspect your handlebar as well to see if there was any damage on that at all, especially if you'd crashed it. Next, you're going to take your new bar and get it ready to install, or in my case, the bar I've just taken off, because I'm doing this for demonstration purposes. Now, if you've got a used bar, it's a good idea to check it before you install it. If you've got a carbon bar in particular, look for any damage on clamping surfaces that could mean it's compromised. So we're looking where it clamps to the stem. You don't want any cracks or compression of the carbon there, and also where the hoods attach as well at the top of the drops. If you're going to be fitting carbon components, maybe a carbon stem or a carbon handlebar, then it's worth applying some carbon assembly paste to the clamping surfaces. This will ensure that they don't slip, which is something you definitely don't want to happen. Although, if you're just using aluminium components like I am here, this isn't necessary. I would, however, suggest that irrespective of the bars or stem that you're fitting, you should apply some grease or anti-seize compound to the threads on the stem bolts, as this will do exactly what it says on the tin or tube and stop them from sticking or seizing up in the future. To reinstall your bars, you're first going to just loosely put on the face plate for the stem. Use an Allen key, or if yours requires it, Torx key again, and just lightly do up the bolts just so that they're held in place. On most handlebars, you'll find graduations and markings around this area which help you get them centered and at the correct angle. At this stage, I would suggest you concentrate on getting the bars centered, but as for the exact angle, you can tweak that later on once you've got everything else set up. Now, when you're tightening the stem bolts, the correct technique is required, so do every single bolt gradually in increments and don't just tighten one single bolt fully, leaving the other three slack, as this can cause one of the bolts to fail as it places undue stress on it. Once you've got the bolts and stem plate fairly secure but not tight, you should finish them with a torque wrench. Now, the exact torque required will depend on your specific handlebar and stem, so it's worth looking up what that manufacturer recommends. But as a ballpark, it's usually around 4 to 6 Newton meters, 5 to 6 Newton meters, something like that. Something else to consider as well is that when considering which torque to use, you might see different ones written on your handlebar to your stem. For example, your stem might say max torque of 6 Newton meters and your handlebar might say max torque of 5 Newton meters on the clamping surface. Always go with the lower one and it should be fine. So in that case, because the bar said 5, I would go with 5. With your handlebars now in place, you can refit your levers. If you've got internally routed levers, at this point, you would re-internally route the cables. But anything for an easy life, standard round bar makes life much easier. With your shifter in place on the bar, you want to adjust it to get it in the right position before you tighten that Allen bolt. So look at it, make sure that it's on straight or as you want it. Some people do like to angle them at funny angles, and make sure that it's the correct height. A good thing to do is to actually take the bike out of the stand at this point and actually maybe just sit on it or just hold the handlebar as you would, so that you can get a feel for how you'd like the shifter to be. Irrespective of how you like your shifters positioned, and it is personal, you are going to want to get them both level and in the same position. A spirit level can be a useful tool in achieving this, but also your handy tape measure can also be good, and you can use the stem and the central plate as a reference point for each side and each shifter. Once you're happy with the position of your shifters, you can tighten up the circular clip bolts with your Allen key again. And again, if you've got a carbon bar and you want to get the torque correct, a torque wrench is the tool that I would recommend you use. With that then done, you can re-wrap your bar tape and then fold back the shifter hoods into position. Before I re-wrap the bar tape, I'm just going to secure the cables down with a bit of the black electrical tape. Once you've wrapped the bar tape, you can just pull your shifter hood back into position and insert your bar bung to secure it. And you're good to go. I'm going to wrap the other side in a minute, but if you want to find out how to wrap bar tape, we've got a separate video that will show you the technique and how you can do it. And if you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, which I hope you have, then please give it a like and consider giving us a follow, as it helps support the channel. And let us know in the comments and on social media what are the maintenance videos you'd like us to do, so that we can help you complete those jobs in the future. All right, we'll see you later.